Carol Sloane is right in there with all the greats.
She's legendary now.
She worked with Ella Fitzgerald and Oscar Peterson.
She was traveling with both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. But she said those were the guys who were going to change the world. I wasn't.
Rock and roll.
And we are back with another Central Scotland Documentary Festival interview. That's right, Central Scotland Documentary Festival. If you've seen some of the interviews and things I've been putting out recently, I've been interviewing a lot of awesome documentarians, and we're going to get into another one today. I'm really excited about this one because Sloane, a jazz singer, really cool doc. Something I don't know a great deal about is jazz, so you've opened my eyes a little bit. But yeah, Central Scotland Documentary Festival, Thursday the 2nd of November till Monday the 6th. We are going to be running all over the place. The Macro Burt Arts Centre in Stirling. Do we know when your movie's showing yet, Michael? Because I've not seen that yet.
I believe it is the 5th. I believe that's a Sunday.
Excellent, excellent. So as you can see, I am joined by Michael Lippert.
Lippert.
Damn. I know. Should have done my research. But I am joined by director Michael Lippert, the director of a documentary called Sloane, a Jazz Singer, a fantastic documentary about an unsung hero in the jazz scene. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But first of all, how are you tonight, Michael? Everything okay? Everything good?
Doing great.
Great. That's what I like to hear. We'll get into Sloane in a quick hot minute, but first of all, I like to go back a little bit, not too far. We're not going to go back too far, but I like to go back a little bit. And how exactly did you come into the filmmaking industry? Let people know a little bit about your background, how you got into it, and you've fallen into documentaries recently. So why the pivot?
Yeah, so I started out as an assistant editor in Chicago. And worked my way up to editor, and I actually still work for that company remotely, Cutter Studios in Chicago, and they do a lot of commercial content. So a lot of our clients are advertising agencies, but a lot of us also have a passion for filmmaking, and so I've always tried to do projects that kind of just speak to my creative interests whenever I can, and so Sloane came about as I got to know this producer in North Carolina who was making a documentary about Carol. Not to get to that too soon, but I got into the commercial world, and then you asked if when I made the pivot to documentaries. It was really just I don't think that I ever thought, oh, I'm going to make either narratives or documentaries. It's all storytelling to me. So. I started out making some short genre films. I'm really into science fiction, and nice. I did a time travel short, and then I did another one sort of a little bit more of a drama about a woman who felt she was destined to go on the first trip to Mars, but really more of a mother-son story. And then really in the last few years, I've been doing more documentary work. I did a documentary on a music venue in North Carolina that was converted from a movie house into a 1940s movie house into a new music venue. And music is just one of my many passions. And so I love making movies about community and music. And I kind of realized that I like the authenticity and the realness you can get from a documentary, the sort of the surprises and discoveries that happen that can't be planned. It's kind of exciting to me. And so when my family and I moved to North Carolina, I started to try to connect with whoever was making films. And it just so happened there was a guy named Stephen Barefoot who knew Carol Sloane back in the 70s and 80s. And if you saw the film, he's one of the club owners who worked with her when she was in North Carolina. And he said, I'm trying to make this movie about Carol Sloane. And I said, who is Carol Sloane? And he said, well, you've heard of probably Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and some of these other great jazz singers, and she's always sort of at the end of the list. It's always, and then there's Carol Sloane.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to shed light on her career. He felt that she was a remarkable singer who deserved more of the spotlight. And so I got to see her in Chicago when I was there for work. She just happened to be performing, and she blew me away. Even at the age of 82, she was just really good. And I love all kinds of music. I mean, I love rock, I love hip hop, I love, and I came to love jazz more in adulthood. But she just struck me as somebody whose story needed to be told, and who was so magnetic and so likable, and just such a firecracker that we had to tell this story while we could get her.
And I believe you spent was it a week or 2 weeks with her up until the because it's the narrative of the documentary is that you're leading up to a concert that she's about to have, a live recording, sorry, that she's going to have at the Birdland. What was it that shaped that narrative? Was it always a case of this is coming up, she's going to be doing this soon, and we're just going to follow that?
Well, part of what helped me realize there was a story to tell was that she still had this Birdland date to look forward to. So
Yeah.
we did have that on the calendar, and tried to make sure that we filmed with her before that date, because I felt that if we waited till after, we wouldn't have the sense of urgency and the tenseness and the nerves. And I just felt that that was a really good sort of way for the story to move forward, was to move towards this performance, that would hopefully be really good, um, and that would pay off. But what I didn't know is I didn't know how we were going to integrate all the archival, how she was going to look back on her whole career while getting ready for this. A lot of that was discovered in the edit, but really I did know pretty early on that I wanted that Birdland show to be the big bucket list item that she's moving towards.
And of course, there is a lot of tension. There is a lot of anxiety leading up to the event. So one of the things that I noticed about Carol, and one of the things you kind of just fall in love with, is that she's a bit of a sassy lady as well. How did you go in there and build this friendship? What kind of approach did you have to take? Because there are certain moments in the doc where it's like, oh, she's snapping, she's going to snap at you. Calm down now. So how did that work out? The chemistry and the relationship.
I had to be careful. I first I asked Steven, the producer, what she liked to drink. So he told me that. So I went in knowing kind of like what she was into, and also, I started with some phone calls and just got to know her over the phone. And I found that she was a really open book. I mean, as soon as she felt she was talking to somebody she could trust, she wanted to get her story out there, and that was very apparent. She saw the Reeves short film I had done about the music venue, and also felt like I was somebody who could help tell her story, and I was glad that helped kind of win her over a little bit. But before we went to visit her and shoot for that 6-7 days prior to the show, I hadn't really spent any meaningful time with her. I mean, that was getting to know her inside that apartment, squeezed in there with 5-6 other people. And we would take out her trash, try to help with dishes. We did whatever we could to stay in her good graces. But it went from you're not going past the living room to basically just living in the whole space, including her bedroom and everywhere. We were everywhere in that place, and really got to be kind of a weird family in a way. It was like, some 20 and 30 something filmmakers, and then this 80-year-old woman who honestly, a lot of the time, I think she was just looking for someone to hear her story, but also she was lonely and living alone, and I think she was glad to have us there. We watched football together. We watched movies
Yeah.
together. So it was really special.
It all comes across as well. It really does, and you can tell that the man sitting behind the camera asking the questions has a really good relationship with this woman. You can really feel that, and that leads into some super tender moments when she's listening to some of her music, and you can just see her drifting off. And what I wanted to ask you about, and what I wondered about, is because we can watch this and we can get a sense of how she is feeling at the time of listening to this, but how was it for Michael to stand there and watch this woman look back on some of her best bits, so to speak, and reminisce about them?
Mm. How was it for me to watch that?
Yeah, like how did it feel for you? Was it from an analytical standpoint, or were you just immersed in the moments?
Yeah, I would say one moment in particular comes to mind where I just remember thinking, I'm getting the most intimate masterclass that you could possibly imagine. We're sitting in her bedroom, which is where her computer was, and that's where she would get on Facebook. I mean, she was very technically adept for a 82-year-old, and but that's where she would listen to her music, and she would play from her iTunes library or whatever. She would play Sarah Vaughan, and she'd say, "This is where she would remember where she first saw her, and would have this memory, and she'd talk about why her voice was so good, and she used it like an instrument, and would point out Mahalia Jackson was another singer she just really loved, and the moment in particular that I'm thinking of, though, that really touched me is in the film, and it's when she's listening back to her first recording with Columbia Records that really kind of put her on the map. That was the song Blue that got her discovered at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1961. And so this is something that happened 60 years ago, and she's hearing it. We had her listen back to a vinyl recording of the Columbia album. And then in the film, you hear the actual live recording. And so the two kind of get compared. You get to kind of compare then and now. And what's striking, I hope, to the viewer is that her sense of tuning is so good, you almost don't realize when it transitions from one to the next. But that particular moment, I had this, I almost felt this kind of guilt because I'm thinking, oh God, I'm making her like relive this really emotional thing. She, there might be sort of some very internal, personal issues because she didn't end up having the success that maybe she'd hoped once, and she was so full of promise at one point, and then I'm opening up this wound. And but I think honestly she was grateful for it. I think it allowed her to kind of step back into who she was back then for a little bit. And but it's one of those moments when you're making documentaries where you start to see, okay, what is the line between what's appropriate and what's going too far. And I didn't ever want her to feel like we were pressuring her into opening up, but I knew that there was a lot of just years worth of emotion that she was going to share with us, and so we needed to be sensitive to that. And so in any way, I think it ended up being a special moment in the film.
Definitely. And there is a few moments like that where you can see that when she's listening or watching or hearing, it's like she's back there, she's in that room. And I loved the way you got that, which is why I was really keen to how you come to this woman who you don't really know and you're spending a few days with her on the lead up to this big concert. How do you get someone there and how that affects you as well? There's a lot of great stories in there that Carol tells us. Is there any anecdotes or any stories that she gave you that you're keeping just for yourself?
Well, if I'm keeping them just for myself, then I'm not saying it here. No, I mean, she certainly had a lot of great anecdotes that didn't make it into the movie. I mean, there were so many famous people she came across, like Mel Brooks. She had an apartment where one of her neighbors knew Mel Brooks, and he made like a joke about her cat, and just little things like that. There was a time when uh, she told Miles Davis to go, take a hike in less nice terms, but as a joke. But there were things that she definitely said, we're not going to put that in there. I don't want to come across in the wrong light. But not, she was really a pretty open book, and what you see in the movie is her. And I was just so glad that when we showed her the film, she was pretty receptive to it. She had notes, but she really, she really went with it, and was on board.
Nah, that's cool. That's cool, and
Yeah.
and I think you have shown her in a fantastic light. I kind of fell in love with her over the length of the doc. I just like I say, not really well versed in the jazz scene, but it kind of got me wanting to know a little bit more and to know a little bit more about Carol. So it's a job well done when you can do that for someone who's not overly sure about what this is.
Right.
What
Right.
what exactly what
Thank you.
exactly do you hope people take away from this movie when they walk out?
Yeah, I hope that I'm glad you said that, you're not as well versed in jazz, and yet the film still was interesting to you. And I
Absolutely.
think I think that's my hope, is that people who love jazz will love this movie for various reasons, whether they lived through that time period or their parents did, or if you don't know anything about jazz, it's really a story about an artist trying to survive. And I think it's very timely because she was taken advantage of much the same way that people are now.
Yeah.
When we're having all these kind of discussions about fair pay, and you got writers and actors strikes, and I think it's very much related to the same kind of thing that singers deal with and dealt with, where they'd get paid a small session fee but never see a residual. She never saw a residual. She went her whole life just trying to do her art, and as she
Mhm.
says in the movie, art don't pay. And so I think hopefully the takeaway is an appreciation for what these artists are doing, that are basically living in poverty, but they move forward because they're so passionate, and it's
Yeah.
what they feel they're meant to do. And I find that to be very inspiring. So hopefully other people do.
And of course, you are out on the festival scene. You're coming to Central Scotland Documentary Festival, the start of November, which we can't wait to show it. Everybody's looking forward to showing this up on the screen for you, and let people into this amazing woman's life, and find out something we didn't know about, someone we really should know about. But when the doc's been going around, what kind of reception is it getting? Are people really into it, and people are loving it, and giving you good feedback? How's the feedback been?
They are. We actually just won Best Documentary at Lonely Seal Film Festival near Boston,
Nice.
which screened just last night. And Steven was there, and he accepted the award. And he texted me and said, "We just won Best Feature Documentary," and everybody was very receptive. And the screenings I've been to, I mean, we've had people getting the tissues out at the end,
Yeah.
and it's really nice to see people laughing at things that I thought were funny, and they agree. um, so by and large, it's been a great response, and we just continue to see it going more places. I'm so glad that we've touched people overseas.
Yeah.
She had a really big fan base in UK and Great Britain, and she had a friend she would call every year on his birthday who lived somewhere in England. And and so she had these fans. She has fans all over the
Yeah.
world, and so we're just happy to see her story getting out there. And hopefully her legacy will live on.
And what's what's next for Michael? Are you gonna go into another documentary, or have you got any projects on the go that you can tell us about?
I'm always working on something. I've got another documentary project I'm starting to chip away at, but it's in the early stages. And then I've got some scripts. I'm also a writer, and always kind of thinking of stories. So we'll see. I don't have anything. This is really the thing right now, and
Yeah.
really our major push at the moment is we have a little bit of fundraising left to do. Um, it's a little bit unconventional, but because of the music rights in the film, we've basically been able to screen at festivals, but beyond that, we're actually still fundraising to be able to cover music rights for a wider release. So if
Oh,
anybody's interested, I don't know if you can have this on your show. You may, I don't know, but if anybody's interested, you go to sloanefilm.com, and there's a donate button. You can learn more about tax deductible donation that you could make to the film if you'd like to see it expand.
no, absolutely, absolutely. I'll put those links in the description and everything like that, and anything that helps. Hopefully, we can do something. Now, I did have a little bit of a question about that, which I kind of just glossed over. Was like the archival footage and all that. Like, what kind of um, problems you may have come over? Because I know when you're dealing with um, like subjects that are that far back, if you know what I mean, it's
Mm.
quite tricky. But what kind of obstacles did you have to overcome and challenges with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, one thing was finding them first. We didn't even know certain things existed when we started the film. I had what I thought was a complete edit almost 2 years ago, and then our other co-producer came on, Taylor Arnold, and he was able to find a bunch of archival footage of her on certain late night show performances. All that black and white footage of her on those talk shows,
Mm.
that was found way after the fact. Carol thought all of it had been destroyed or taped over, because back in those days, in order to save film, they would just
That's what
record
yeah.
over it. And so, and then I think some stuff was destroyed in a fire. Plus, she was only on the first 15 minutes of the Tonight Show,
Yeah.
which wasn't broadcast everywhere. So she just said, "You're never going to find it." And we found some footage, and we found some audio, which we could only get to by going to the Library of Congress in person in the height of the pandemic, in the winter. And so Taylor went, and it sounds so old fashioned, but you have to go there. You sit in a room, you look in through a log, and you listen to whatever you think is noteworthy, and you write the file name down, and then you have to pay them, and then they send it to you. And then finally I got to listen. That's where he found the original recording of her singing at Newport,
Wow.
which again we didn't know until he went to the Library of Congress. We all just got chills because
Yeah.
you listen to that, and it's the closest thing to being there. So anyway, we Library of Congress was very easy to work with. There were a lot of really great places. There's certain archival houses that their whole business is they will license content that is archival content, and so there's I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's various ones that have just obscure jazz or
Yeah.
night show type thing, old Steve Allen and shows like that. And then and then we worked with Getty. We did a lot of stuff that was free to the public. But yeah, it's not cheap, and we
Yeah.
did have to, our initial fundraising was to pay for the visuals, and then we knew we had to pay for the music, which was by far the most expensive. So what we did is we did a 1-year festival deal so that we could get it out in the world. And then our next step is covering the rest of those rights so that we can do streaming, theatrical, those types of things.
Yeah. I think as well, it only kind of occurred to me because you sort of just think to yourself, well, you're telling Carol Sloane's story, like she will have all these things at hand and be able to give to you and let you use and whatnot. But then you kind of find out throughout the doc that she kind of doesn't really own any of her stuff. And then there's even like a bit where she talks about a photograph. I believe it's with the Rolling Stones, and she's like, "If you can find that, good luck to you." And it's sort
Yeah.
of like, how on earth have you put this together then? so it was just a question I needed to ask you.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of it also came from Carol. So she had old pictures and things. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've been searching for that Rolling Stones photo forever. So, Mick, if you're out there, you know, uh, but yeah,
He's watching these.
oh yeah, he's definitely. I mean, I know he's tuning in. I heard he loves Nerdly. Um, but yeah, so we're trying to search for those things. But what was the other part of the question? Just
No,
that
no,
she.
it was just more about the fact that how you got all the stuff together, and it's brilliant. I think you've done a cracking job because you
Oh, thank
couldn't.
you.
It's a great doc, and I've already said it. So I'm not going to say it too many times. But I genuinely got into this documentary and loved learning about Carol Sloane because I didn't know about her.
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah.
So what I normally do when I'm wrapping these things out, and again, everybody, Central Scotland Documentary Festival, November the 2nd through to the 6th. Sloane is showing on the 5th, we believe. So if you can get yourself there, get yourself there. If you can make it, please do absolutely make it, because there's some great documentaries getting shown, and Sloane is up there with them. So normally with me talking to documentarians and whatnot, is that a word? I think that's a word.
Yeah, documentarian.
Yeah, documentary filmmakers, let's just go with that one. So normally when I'm talking to guys like yourselves, I like to ask a question, if there was ever one documentary out there that you think people should watch that doesn't include your own, what would
Mm.
it be? But I'm going to change this because, as I said earlier, I'm not very well versed in jazz. If I was to go and listen to any one album or any one artist, and I kind of feel like you might just say Carol Sloane, who do you think I should check out? What do you think I should check out to get me into that music?
I think Carol would say, and I would have to agree, probably Duke Ellington.
Nice.
She loved Duke Ellington, and she would do a lot of his standards as her own performances. So I think Duke Ellington is a great one. But everybody's drawing from the Great American Songbook, which is not really a book. It's just all these kind of shared songs through the years. But George Gershwin. There's the new movie Maestro that's coming out with Bradley Cooper about Leonard Bernstein.
All right, yeah.
He's another kind of great one to check out. But I mean, God, Louis Armstrong, really, one of the things Carol would have wanted to get across is that this music was innovated by these great Black artists, and that they should get the due for really originating, innovating this music, and she was a student of that and became great later, but that we should really go back and listen to Thelonious Monk, listen to Jelly Roll Morton, just all these people that were integral to really, in many ways, deciding where the culture was going to head. I mean, jazz became huge, and so anyway, it also informs music that we love now. Rock, all that stuff comes from the blues and from jazz. So
Exactly. So we're going to wrap this out now. And again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. It's been great speaking to you. I really, really enjoyed the documentary. I can't wait for everyone to see it at the festival. But before we go, why don't you let people know where they can find you in terms of social media, websites, anything like that, and a quick a quick sentence about why they should check out Sloane at the festival.
Yeah, you can find out more about me at lippertfilm.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Lippert Films. I'm on Facebook too. But yeah, or just follow at Sloane Jazz Film on Instagram, as well as Facebook. And people should go see this film because it's really about loving art, and also the act of getting together in a common space to enjoy art together. And I think that's something that you get when you watch live jazz. It's really best seen in person. And so I hope you get out and see it. November 5th. I just saw it's November 5th, I believe, at 1:45. So if you're in central Scotland, I will be with you in spirit, and so will Carol, and we hope you enjoy it.
I'm pretty sure everyone will. Again, as Michael said, everybody get your ass there. Come and watch this documentary. It's fantastic.
That's right.
So, Michael, thank you so much for doing this. And I'll
Thank
wrap
you.
that.
Thank you, Kevin.